So yeah, I'm Steve. I do a lot of talking, but I never use PowerPoint because I find that if I have a script to stick to, I'm more likely to stumble. But today, like just for you guys, I created like a really short PowerPoint. So I apologise for the quality of it first of all, and I've also got it on my phone. So if you see me looking at my phone, I'm not texting. It's just so I can be ahead of you guys. Some of you have heard me speak before, and some of you might know Wallpark and what I do. But for those who don't, you'll learn today. So I moved up to Manchester when I was 18 years old to study business management at Manchester University. I was in halls of residence about 100 metres from here. And I was there for one lecture before I made the decision to drop out. And I'll explain that, I'll explain how we got to having 8 investors and me winning this award, this beautiful baby over here. And I'll explain this is the award you talked about, we'll just keep this here. And hopefully you guys can take something from it. Okay, so I used to sit in a room with my friend Joe every day, and we used to play Xbox, we used to play FIFA, and it was horribly boring. And I thought to myself, there's 100,000 students around me in this city, yet I'm sat with Joe every day playing Xbox, and this wasn't what the university experience was for me, that's not what I signed up for. And so I remember jumping up from Joe's bed playing Xbox, and I was like, Joe, because I was 18 at the time, and one of my needs was to, I was trying to get laid. And I'm just going to be honest with you, and if I swear I apologise, but I was trying to get laid. And I was thinking, I'm sitting in this room with so much testosterone in it every day, I'm going to create a student website where it's going to be a student dating website. I thought that's what we need. So I went on Google, I literally remember jumping up off his bed and I was like, I'm going to Google student dating website. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a platform where I can get laid. Now, student dating website, like what I found was sleazy enough for me to never want to go back. A bunch of CV websites of like, these kind of images. I thought, Joe, do you know what? I'm finishing that student website business, it's done. I've got a new idea, I'm going to start a website where students can do everything they want to. It's going to have jobs, it's going to have accommodation, you can go on webcam there, it's going to have everything. There's going to be a million tabs across the top. And it was kind of on the basis of this, what I saw all around Manchester, people trying to reach out to students in really old-fashioned ways. And it's 2013, well, it's 2013, it was 2010 then, but it's 2010, and people are still putting posters up. When we have the internet, we have information in our fingertips in seconds, and people are still putting posters up. So I'm going to create this website where students can do everything. And this is how communication worked in the student world currently. If I'm Steve, and if I'm trying to get to Ryan, who's the target, I'm the arrow, I've got to go through a chain of people to get there, and it works by word of mouth. And the way I saw it working was like this, where you broadcast a message to a massive group of people. So I sat in my room for the next 3 months. I have no web experience at all. I've never built a website, I still don't know how to code. There's probably people in this audience who are better at building websites than me. In fact, if you've ever, so this guy right here is like me. like, I cannot code, right? So I was in a position where I was like, I can't code, I can't design, I'm poor, perfect. And this is where we started. But I had this little issue of university on my back, so I went into university and I told them that I was dropping out because I had an idea that I wasn't equipped to pursue. And here we were. And when I called my mum, and my mum's African, and anyone who's got parents that aren't probably from the UK understands that those kind of parents appreciate education way more than the parents over here. My mum, she dropped out of school when she was 7 years old, she still can't read or write. So when I told her that her baby wasn't going to university, she didn't take it too well. and she literally disowned me. There's no word of a lie, she literally disowned me. And she thought that was the way to tell me to go back to university was disowning him. If I disown him, if I don't call him for the next 2 years, then maybe he'll go back to university. And she was obviously trying to do what was right for me in her opinion, but the lady doesn't know, with all due respect, she doesn't know what the internet is. She thinks it's all black magic. So when I told her that I was dropping out to pursue something in the internet space, she wasn't equipped to tell me if that was a good idea or a bad idea. And so I began. I spent the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months in my room kind of like playing around with ideas. I was using Word and Publisher to make these designs for this website, just moving boxes around to how I wanted them to look. And this is a little piece of card, because remember I was poor. And this is actually me deciding what to put on the website. The top one says jobs, second thing is buy and sell events, accommodation and questions. And I spent a whole lot of time building this massive website where there was loads of tabs across the top. I couldn't build it, I was just designing it. There's loads of tabs across the top. And then after 4 or 5 months of doing this, I asked myself, I said, what people can use this website for. And I added this tiny little wall to the end of the website. So there's 10 tabs across the top where you can do all these amazing things, and then there's this tiny wall on the end of the website. And after 4 months, I've finally done it. I finally finished this design. I asked myself, what are people going to use this little wall for on the end of the website? And I came to the conclusion that people were going to use this little wall for the same thing as they were going to use the whole website, so we got rid of everything. And I just kept this tiny little wall, and I focused on making this wall really smart. I remember it being about 2 AM in the morning. I was in the shower, and I was looking at the bathroom tiles in the shower, and I was thinking, like, there's 3 universities in Manchester, so we can have 4 tiles across the top, and if someone clicks here, and it came to this design here, where these 3 buttons across the top, that's MMU, that's the University of Manchester, and that's the whole zone. And I was thinking, maybe if you click on MMU, you can post to students at MMU. If you click on the whole zone, you can post to both the whole community in Manchester. Click on UM, you can post to them. And this was the first design I ever made, and this is how good my design skills were. That took me a couple of weeks, and that's just something I made on Publisher. And so I thought, right, I've got something to go and show people now. I can go and see if my idea's good. And all this time I'm getting poorer and poorer. I still haven't heard from my mum in like 6 months. She's still like dodging my calls. And so I thought, I'm a guy, I've got no experience at all. I'm going to need to find people who can do this. I'm probably going to have to find people to give me money. And I'm going to have to sell this to a lot of people on the basis that I'm probably not equipped to do this myself. And so I started looking into ways to sell yourself and to sell ideas to people. And there's this analogy that I always draw on about a pencil or a pen. And there's 2 ways you can sell a pen. You can either say, this is a pen, it's 99p. Or you can go to people and you can say, this is a tool that generations upon generations have used to communicate with their loved ones forever. And it's 99p. And what sounds more appealing to you? And this is the kind of premise that I always talk about today, and when it comes to investors and pitching and selling something to people, is turn things into magic. And that's what I started doing. I didn't say, oh, this is a cheap website where people can find jobs and they can get pissed and they can get laid. I would say, like, we're giving students the power of community and all those things that come with that. So, okay, so these images, I'll have to explain them. So I'm 18, no one wants to listen to me, I'm poor, I stink because I had like 1 jumper. And people were ignoring my emails, and I was thinking, who are these people? Like, I want to show you my website design idea. Like, why are you ignoring my emails? And I'd send emails like, hey, I'd get that lady Janet, she would tell me that he's in a meeting. Well, I know he wasn't in a meeting. We've all been there, right? And I was thinking, people are just ignoring me, and I thought, why are they ignoring me? Why am I getting ignored? And the answer was ultimately because there was probably like 20 or 30 more Steves trying to get to Dave who makes the decisions, right? So I changed it up a little bit. Instead of sending emails, I'd send gold envelopes. And I'd put the person's name on it. And this is like, people wouldn't ignore. If you get a gold envelope in the post, you think you've won something. You know what I mean? So I started sending gold envelopes, and I put people's names in it. I used to put cookies in those envelopes. Every now and then I'd glue one of these to him, because if you get that in the post, you're going to knock all your other mail out the way and pick up your gold envelope because of the game shows and stuff like that. And it started paying off. I sent one of these gold envelopes to Panasonic. I was like, I need some cameras for my website. And within 48 hours, a guy was knocking on my door with a recorded sign for delivery with 2 of the best HD video recordable cameras in the market. And this taught me a massive, massive lesson in if you don't ask, you don't get. And all I did was send him a gold envelope, and they sent me thousands of pounds worth of camera equipment within 48 hours. And then so this started spurring my whole, if you don't ask, you don't get state of mind. And the crazy thing about if you don't ask, you don't get, it's free to ask. And the upside of asking for something, it could be thousands of pounds, it could be your dream, but the downside of not asking is nothing. So, moving on. So this is a video, right? So when I've just got a brand new iPhone 5, and I restored, and it does the little restore thing, and it restored it to May last year. So on the train up, I was like, there's a video that I recorded when I was 18 in my bedroom, and it's quite funny. I look a little bit different, I look a bit suspect, but I thought I'd play it. No one's ever seen this before, I've seen it once, so. Okay, so.
Now, it means that I can't feed myself. My bank balance at the moment, when you take a photo of yourself and you're trying to video. Okay, so, yeah, so the position I'm in right now means that I can't feed myself. My bank balance is -500, which is my overdraft limit. I have credit cards which are all maxed out. I have another bank account which is maxed out. I have, what else do I have? So I have I owe about £3,000 in rent. Not to this place, the place I was at before. I owe this place about £900 in rent. What else? Oh, the phone that I'm videoing on now. Yeah, that's been barred because I didn't pay the bill because I'm broke. I had no food. And I've lost about 2 stone in weight. All the fun of living your dream, baby. This is my fridge. See that top section there? Okay. No one likes ketchup or mayonnaise that much.
Yeah, so that's the kind of position I was in. This looks like vomit, doesn't it? That's literally what I ate for 5 or 6 months. Before I moved up to university, my brother Jason said to me, he's like, oh, there's this massive bag of pounded oats in my room, you might need it at some point. And I'm like, fuck off, Jason, I'm not eating that. And then like a year and a half later, I found myself eating that massive 5-kilogram bag of powdered oats virtually every day. Like, as I said, this looks disgusting. You just pour the water into it, and then you mix the oats into it, and you just drink it, okay? And when you're hungry, it's good, right? It was good. And these are a bunch of bailiff letters, you know, that I kept on my desk. They were kind of like a motivation for me, because sooner or later they would come to me. My credit cards, which were all maxed out and completely spent. This is the technology I was using at the time. I not only was I an entrepreneur, but I also became like a computer surgeon, in the sense that I could repair a wire like 7 or 8 times. Like I learned how to solder wires because my computer was absolutely messed up. But if you go to a meeting with this, like, do you remember that scene from Pursuit of Happiness where Will Smith walks in with the paint on his trousers? Like, you've got to come up with a great excuse. But it all taught me something, and that's kind of what has shaped my character today. This image you're looking at is a famous plane crash. It's called the Andes plane crash. And there was 40 guys in a plane that were going over to play rugby. One of them had brought their family with them. And as they were going over the mountains, the plane went down. And it crashed in the middle of the Andes mountains. And half the people died straight away. And it left them with 20 dead bodies and 20 survivors. And within about 10 days, they'd ran out of all their food. They only had like a little biscuits and things like this. And they found themselves in a position where they heard on the radio, they had a small radio with them, and they heard on the radio that the rescue efforts to find them had ended. And they're in the middle of the Andes mountain. They have no idea how far away they are from civilization. They're in this kind of ditch. They're in this kind of like little like kind of ditch type thing right in the middle of it. They don't even know what's over the mountain that's surrounding them. And then 10 days goes past, and they're all completely starving. And they find themselves in a position of sheer desperation where they either die or they eat the dead bodies of the 20 of their friends who died with them. And in that position, when you reach the bottom, when you find yourself in that position, I guess eating dead bodies probably isn't a bad idea. So they decided to eat the dead bodies of the final 20 people who had died with them, their friends and their family. And 10 days went on, and an avalanche came down the mountain and killed 10 more of the survivors, so there was 10 of them left. And they'd got to a point now where they'd started to run out of dead bodies. 30 days later, they'd started to run out of dead bodies. They ate the 10 bodies of the 10 that died in the avalanche as well. And the guy who was the leader of this camp, the guy who was the natural leader of this group called Andreas, looked over and he saw that the 2 bodies left were his mum and his sister. And he didn't want to eat his mum or his sister. And he had about 3 days worth of food left, so he picked up a supply of his food, and he said, I'm going to get out of this mountain. He said, I'm going to walk out of this mountain. There's a famous quote from Winston Churchill where he says, when you're going through hell, keep going. And it's really applicable in this case. So he picks up 3 days' supplies of food, and he says, right, I'm going to go out this mountain. Hopefully it'll take me about 3-4 days, maybe 5. And it took him 3 days just to climb the hill that was surrounding that little pit for him to look out. And after that point, he was with his friend. He said, you know, you go back. I'm going to go on my own because I need your food to carry on. And when they reached the top point, they were expecting to see grass, maybe a road. All they saw was mountain upon mountain for as far as the eye could see. And walking in snow isn't the same as walking on a pavement, I'm sure you can appreciate. And Andreas looked back at the camp, and he looked back and he could see a speckle, which was his dead mum and his dead sister. And he made the decision at that point to carry on going. And when they asked him, why didn't you go back? Why didn't you just go back to the rest of the camp, maybe, you know, eat the dead bodies? And his answer was, I couldn't go back. And when you find yourself in a position where you can't go back, The only way is forward, and that's kind of the position I found myself in. There was no going back. And this story really resonated with me. So 5 days goes on, he's been walking, he's now run out of food. All the various different kinds of diseases have started to set into his body, but he carries on walking. And it gets to the 10-day mark when he stumbles across a river and he collapses. And it just so happened that someone was coming past on a horse, a ranger, and he ended up throwing a rock over to him. The ranger threw some rocks over to him because they couldn't hear each other, they were too far away. And he wrote on it what had happened. And the ranger couldn't believe it. The ranger went off on his horse and ended up coming back with the rescue police. And then Andreas took the rescue team back to base camp where his friends were, and they were all saved in the end. But Andreas' perseverance in that case is what saved them all. And if he had stayed, and if he hadn't gone back, then all of them would have died, and they would have lost their lives forever. So that was a really important story to me. And the obstacles that I faced on my journey to doing what I do now, I don't see them as life telling me I can't do something. I see it as life telling me, like, how bad do you want it? And those obstacles are in place to stop the people who don't really want it. Because everyone in this room has probably had an idea. Everyone's probably had a business idea at some point, or some really cool idea. And there's good reason as to why you didn't pursue that. And it's because you didn't want it badly enough. And that's what I see these obstacles as. So, moving on forward. Finally, one of the universities in Manchester said they'd give me a meeting. And I sat down with them and showed them my little piece of paper and sold it to them, sold the big magical dream to them. And they believed in it. They believed in me. So I went on LinkedIn and I typed in the word investor. The first guy that came up, I emailed him. Hey, I'm an 18-year-old guy. I've actually got the email on me. Hey, I'm an 18-year-old guy with an idea, blah, blah, blah. Within 48 hours, he told me he was going to give me the money, just by emails, 4 emails. He told me he was going to give me the money I needed to take me to the next step. I then, because I joined some website, because again, I was putting myself out there, I got an email saying, hey, Steve, do you want to come and talk in London at this event? Someone's dropped out. A guy who just sold his company for 30 million, a 16-year-old who's a good friend of mine, had dropped out. And like, we need you to speak. So I said, yeah, of course, I'll go up there. But went up there on the megabus, didn't have any money. I'm in my shirt and tie, could barely afford that. And I spoke, and Facebook were there. All the press in the UK were there. The Metro newspaper were interviewing me on stage for 20 minutes. Coca-Cola were there, the guys that run Coca-Cola. And by the time I got off stage, there was a queue of people waiting at my table to give me business cards. And for the next 6 hours, it was just, are you looking for money? Are you looking for money? Are you looking for money? And I ended up meeting the guys that built Friends United, which is one of the biggest social networks in the world before Facebook, who they sold it for 200 million, and they invested in my company as well. And it took us to a point where we had 8 investors. And this is me on BBC Newsnight, talking about entrepreneurship and so forth. This is the platform we built. And these are just quickly, I'll take you through a few things. Is it okay if I go through these? Okay, cool. So the first thing, the big thing I learned is about your parents. Listen to your parents if you want to end up where they ended up. Because that's the information you have, right? If I listened to my mum, I would be running a small hair salon in Plymouth because that's the information she had that took her to her destination. So if you want to end up where your parents end up, listen to them. If you don't, go and listen to the people who ended up where you do want to end up. What's the difference? The difference between myself and Steve Bartlett, who didn't do all this, is simply self-belief, believing that I can. That famous quote, those who believe they can and those who believe they can't are both usually right, is my favourite quote. Failure over greatness. Everybody fails. Oprah Winfrey was kicked off TV because she wasn't fit for TV. Michael Jordan was dropped from his college basketball team. Walt Disney was told he didn't have enough imagination and was kicked out. You only live once. We're only going to live once. What petrifies me more than failure is being average. The power of being at the bottom. When you're at the bottom in life, there's only one way you can go. If I threw all my life, I was at the bottom, I had no money, nothing. I could only go up. I couldn't go further down. So, haters, your peers, their hate and their opinion of you, never let it affect yourself. Their opinion of you is a reflection of their opinion of themselves and what they believe they can achieve. Delusion, we're all delusional about our ideas, but you have to be or else you won't do it. Smart work. Okay, if hard work was all it took, then there'd be millionaires picking tea leaves out in Africa, because those guys work a lot harder than I do, but it's all about smart work. Never a perfect time. Everyone in this room is probably saying to themselves, I'm going to do something next week, next year. There's never going to be a perfect time to do that thing you've been procrastinating about for the last 5 years. So pick an imperfect time. How about now? And the last one, you have to have insane passion or you'll give up. And I'm going to leave you with a question, which is, if you knew you weren't going to fail at something, what would you do? Ask yourselves that question later. If you knew you weren't going to fail, what would you do? And whatever the answer is, you've just told yourself that the only reason you're not doing that is because you're scared of failing. because that's the only variable I introduced. Thank you.